Greetings, Legionnaires! Just wanted to stop by and give you a little review in progress on Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu. Now, I've had the game for a little bit here, and I wanted to give you some of my preliminary thoughts before I give a full review, which will actually probably be more so on the podcast, because guess what? This year is stacked with so many games, but I wanted to touch base with this and let you guys know if it's worth the full price. So, Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee. I only have Pikachu here, but pretty similar. There's just a few differences as far as which Pokemon you can have in which game. So there's, I think, like a list of 7 or 8 of them that only appear in one version versus the other. Kind of how the old Blue and Red actually worked way back in the day. But you can kind of look at Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee as something of a spiritual successor and kind of a remake to those games, and also maybe Pokemon Yellow, in that you kind of have, you start off with not one of the classic starters, and then you go around and you collect, all the Pokemon, but also get a chance to collect the other starters like Squirtle, Charmander, and Bulbasaur. Now, for those people who are really interested in getting those starters, those ones I talked about right there, you can find Bulbasaur pretty early on. I think I saw one in Viridian Forest, and I captured one. There is a Charmander in Cerulean City that once you capture just 50 Pokemon, the guy will give you, some just random guy will give you, which was kind of difficult for me because I'm not really into just catching everything I see, because I'm kind of old school in that way where I didn't want to capture something in those old games unless I was going to use it. And that's just the mentality that used to be there, because that would just be a waste of time. But we'll get into that in a second. And then also I saw Squirtle running around with Officer Jenny causing problems in Cerulean, so I wouldn't be surprised if Squirtle was also in my future as well. So if you enjoyed those old games right from the get-go, there's plenty of charm here and a lot of nods. Just from the beginning where you start off in your room, you can kind of see things like an old sprite, that's on your calendar from the original game. Basically just so many things that remind you of that first game. Nothing wrong with that. And so nostalgia is really the play here. For a lot of people my age who grew up in the 90s, this is something that's just like, hey, finally we're getting like Blue and Red on our TVs. And we had Pokemon Snap, we had Pokemon Stadium, which I love both those things. But this is finally like the realization to an extent. Now, it is kind of, I don't want to say bare bones, because it's not that. There's still everything you'd expect, but this game is highly influenced by Pokemon Go. Now, what do I mean by that? So basically, for anyone who's unfamiliar with the most popular mobile game of all time, it seems like, Pokemon Go is a game about walking around in the real world and catching as many Pokemon as you possibly can. You can take those Pokemon then, even the duplicates, and trade them into Professor Oak or whomever's in that game, and then you basically get like a currency, which I'm, super not familiar with, but that, neither here nor there. That is back in this game. So you have the ability to catch as many Pokemon as you possibly want, and then send them back to the lab for research or whatever. But the game incentivizes you to catch a bunch of Pokemon, because when you catch Pokemon in this game, when they're free roaming around the open world, which I love, it's nice to see them out there. It's no more random encounters. You see them walking around. But when you capture one, basically it gives experience to your entire team, because you cannot battle Pokemon randomly. You can't just see, like I said, that Bulbasaur in the beginning. I didn't battle it, I just caught it with a Pokeball. Now you use your Joy-Cons, or you can use this little Pokeball accessory for $50, because that's the only way to get Mew, I guess, in the game. It's kind of like a weird pre-order incentive, whatever, I don't care about Mewtwo for life. But it just is weird to me to just like kind of go in and use your Joy-Con, and to like you throw the Pokeballs and you might miss, and there's timing that has to be involved, and you can kind of spin it and you can give them different berries to these Pokemon. So it's a lot more like the Safari Zone in the original games, where you kind of only had a rock or bait or Pokeballs or Safari Balls to throw. That is what this game is. And once you capture a Pokemon, typically from what I've seen, it gives more experience to your Pokemon and to your entire team than any battle really has up until this point. So let's just play for instance here. You can still get in battles with other trainers. So when you fight these other trainers, they usually have 1, maybe 2 Pokemon at least to start with. I haven't fought too many people that have more than that. But for the most part, it seemed like it was almost like 3/4 experience. So you get like 70 or 75 experience for defeating one of these Pokemon, or whatever. But then when you captured a Pokemon out in the wild, it would give like 100 experience to your entire team. Because when you're battling, it typically tends to give most of the experience to the Pokemon that we're actually fighting, and then it gives like experience share to everybody else. I think you can turn that off. I haven't really messed with it too much, but basically your other Pokemon still can level up even if they aren't battling. But it seems like if you want to like grind out levels, it's not going to be you facing off against random Pokemon in the wild for hours and hours. It's you capturing Pokemon, like tons and tons of them, because that will level you, the entire team up, like really quickly. So something to keep in mind. Also, from what I've heard, and I can't confirm this completely yet, but it sounds like Pikachu, the one you start with, or Eevee, the one that you start with, depending on which game you have, that Pokemon doesn't ever evolve or can't evolve. And I love Raichu, so I caught myself a Pikachu over in Viridian Forest, and I've been just leveling it as well. And that has been something that I'm like, alright, I still want a Raichu, and if my Pikachu can't be Raichu, I get that. So Pikachu is obviously a really big part of this game. If anybody played Hey You Pikachu, the intro to the game really kind of stirs the nostalgia for that. It's really kind of cool to see that, and even though that game was frustrating, so frustrating when I was a child, we were kind of yelling into a microphone on the N64, like, Pikachu, do this, Thundershock. But Pikachu, obviously adorable, kind of really fun to have this interaction with a Pokemon to the next level, in that I can dress Pikachu in different ways. The one you start off with basically makes Pikachu look like a mini you, like you're just in like a sport, like, jacket and hat and stuff, so they kind of, you know, they resemble you very closely. And you do, I will mention this, there are, I think 8 presets for your trainer and how they look. I know a lot of people will say that's not enough, as far as like skin color, eye color, hair color, but honestly I don't really care too much about that personally. It's more about the Pokemon, it's not about me. But that's just me. So if that bothers you, just know that the character customization for you personally is not very high. Also, you can interact with Pikachu more so than you can with any of your others. So basically what you can do, if anyone's played Kingdom Hearts Dream Drop Distance, which might not be a ton of people, but you can go into this mode or this menu where Pikachu's sitting right in front of your face, and you can kind of, you poke its ears, poke its tail, kind of like Mario 64, like that menu screen, like you kind of pull on his face. But you can also kind of give him a scratch on the belly or on the face, and, you know, just go, cha, you know, whatever, and it's just so cute. And then you can also feed it different things and kind of bond with it a little bit better. And that's kind of fun to do. Apparently that's going to play a part in the game, and when you're fighting and Pikachu's out there, like your starter, and I think Eevee's the same way, after they do something good, or if they've, you know, fainted an enemy or whatnot, you can, like, your trainer says, like, hey Pikachu, I knew you could do it, and Pikachu kind of looks over its shoulder and just kind of is like, yeah, like, there's a little moment there. And I gotta say, one of my favorite things, though, is starting off a fight with Pikachu, because it's on your shoulder, and when the other trainer throws a Pokeball and Pikachu runs and jumps off your arm in this really cool way, and it's like, whoa, yeah, we're ready to go. But when Pikachu faints, quote unquote, it just cries, turns away, and just runs back to you, so you don't have to, like, go out there and pick it up and be like, oh no, Pikachu. So, yeah, just keep that in mind. So that's kind of a main feature of the game. But besides that, if you've played Pokemon Red or Blue, you're going to be very familiar with this game. I was happy that most of the spawn points seemed to be very similar for the Pokemon that they were back in the day. So for instance, like Pikachu is a rare spawn in Viridian, but I still found him, or her, another female actually, because both my Pikachu, I think, are female. They've got the kind of heart-shaped tail. But also Bulbasaur, I was freaking out about that, seeing it in Viridian Forest. I caught a Growlithe over in Cerulean. It was like, oh my gosh. I was looking for an Abra up kind of by the cave, but there were Psyducks there instead. So I was like, oh, you know what? Golduck's on my personal favorite 6 team, so I'm building my team up right now. And it's a lot of fun. It does seem a little strange, though, because I went back to get a male Nidoran from earlier because I love Nidoking, and it evolved after I caught some other Pokemon, and I put him on follow. So basically, you can also pick any Pokemon on your team or in your party and put them on follow mode, which is really cool because you get to see them run around with you, and then bigger monsters or bigger Pokemon like Onix, you can actually ride them. But I had this little Nidoran follow me around. I was catching Pokemon, and then eventually it just evolved into Nidorino, and it just felt like I didn't earn it. It was like, did he watch me catch this Pokemon, and that's how they got experience? It's very strange, and obviously they're implementing the, you know, Pokemon Go aspects into the game. And this is supposed to be, I think, for 2 parties. I think it's for people who are nostalgic for those old games, like myself, and then a lot of people who got brought into Pokemon Go, and they want an easier barrier for entry, a lower hurdle for everyone to hop in to the world of Pokemon and not make it super intense. That's kind of what I'm getting for as the feeling, which is fine. So I'm not expecting as much if they did like a full remake of those games, because even though this has a lot of those aspects in it, the random battling being gone feels like a core tenet that should be there. So that's why it almost feels like kind of like a weird spin-off. It's in a weird realm. It's kind of a gray area. Some of the additions are kind of interesting too. Jesse, James, and Meowth from the original, anime are here, which is kind of fun to have them, being in and amongst the Team Rocket stuff and fighting Coughing and Ekans is really cool. It's also a little weird, but you do have kind of two rivals. You have your classic rival that you pick and you name, but he's different from Gary or Blue, as it were, even though they look similar, and you run into both, but your rival is still like the guy you run into all the time, even though originally in Blue and Red, your rival was Oak's grandson, Blue. It's very confusing. It just seems a little redundant, but it's like, okay, all right, whatever. But I want to talk about a few other things too. The world itself looks really good, very inviting, very warm. All the Pokemon look really cool. I love the design of like the Pokedex. When you open it up, it kind of like goes into like a Pokedex, then you can see them. And looking at these 3D models a little bit, really jolly. Really kind of scratches that itch of just the young Jimmy who would have like lost his freaking mind looking at this. But yeah, all the Pokemon look really good, and they do a pretty decent job of making them scale as far as like height wise. Some Pokemon look really tiny once in a while, but for the most part they all look about the size they should. So Onyx, for example, there's one like sitting in this lady's house, I think over in Cerulean, and he's super tall. I was like, oh my gosh, that's pretty cool. Let's see, what else can I talk about here? I've beaten both Brock and Misty so far, and I will say this: Starmie in Pokemon Blue had Bubble Beam, and then in Fire Red or whatever, it had Water Pulse, and now it's got this move called Scald, which is like a water and fire move. So basically Starmie's BS, and I kind of hate it. But it's tough. It's tough. Some of these battles are not easy. I gotta say that. Like, at first it seemed okay, and you can have drop-in, drop-out co-op. So basically, my sister Katie, she hopped in, and you just use the other Joy-Con, and they basically get to use other Pokemon in your party. So you can basically go 2 against 1 on most all these battles, which seems kind of cheap. But they call them the support trainer, and I think this is, again, another nod to saying, like, hey, if it's maybe your child's first Pokemon game and you want to play alongside them, you can't interact with anything, but you can fight alongside them and help them out. So that's another reason why I'm hesitant to call it a full remake, because it has co-op in it, but it's not fully fleshed out co-op, if that makes sense. But yeah, I still think it's a nice little feature to throw in there, because they didn't have to do that, but they did, and they make it a little more accessible to a group of people then, which I enjoy. Yeah, but so far I'm enjoying the game. It's, something that I find myself smiling over and actually getting genuinely excited about seeing these Pokemon in the wild. When I saw Growlithe, I was like, oh my god, it's Growlithe! And when I finally caught it, I was like, oh, thank goodness. And it was also a level 13, my favorite number, a female. I almost called it Lily. You can rename your Pokemon at any time, so that's really nice if people want to kind of give it a nickname, any of these monsters a nickname, and then change them. And you can access your PC, or Bill's PC in a way, from your bag now, so you don't have to go to the Pokemon Center and kind of go through all of that. You can swap them out on the fly, which is really nice when you're out in the environment, because so often I remember making so many pilgrimages back to these Pokemon Centers and just switching up Pokemon and being like, where did I put that one? So this makes it a lot easier, and the way they're represented in the bag is little sprites of like their old school sprites to some degree, like the newer versions of those sprites, but they look pretty good. So the presentation is definitely there. Also the music, oh my goodness, the music. Hearing these old school songs, if anybody watched Pokemon Origins, it gives that feel where they like really put money into this, but hearing these tunes again remastered or redone, and just like, oh my goodness, the full orchestra that it sounds like just gets my heart racing every time I get into a battle, or next time you go into a city, it's just like, yep, this is really good. So I enjoy it. If you're not a huge Pokemon fan, if this doesn't attack you in a nostalgic way, I would say this is probably something you want to avoid, just because it really is a love letter kind of to those old fans, while also being an entry point for newcomers who want to get into the genre. And if you're excited about Pokemon through Pokemon Go, then for sure this would be like a great next step to get closer to those old school games. Then maybe you could play something like Fire Red or Leaf Green and then be like, okay, yeah, this is what they were going for. So that's who I would say this is for. But if this doesn't really immediately capture you from what you're seeing right here from some of the battles, which is less, and the expedited process of leveling up your entire team just by catching Pokemon and catching as many Pokemon as you possibly can all the time, because like with that Charmander, I had to catch 50 of them, and I'd only got like 25, so I just went around and like caught a ton of Pokemon just to get Charmander, because I'm like, you know what, I freaking want Charmander on the team. So that was a little grating for me, because I was catching a bunch of Pidgeys and Oddish and stuff like that. I was like, ugh. But if you're into that, if you like Pokemon Go, if you like this as a kid, or if you're interested in getting into this franchise, this is a great point for you. This is not a highly technical game. You know, the moment-to-moment gameplay isn't like shocking. If you don't already love this world or are drawn in by what you're seeing right now, then I would say you probably want to avoid it. So yeah, there you go. There's my brief little, 16 and a half minute kind of chat with you about this game. Like I said, I'll be doing more of a full review on the Critical Podcast once I wrap this game up, because let's see, we've done 2 gyms, there's 8 gyms altogether, and then there's the Elite Four after that, with a bunch of like the legendary birds and then Mewtwo and stuff after that. So really, I'm not trying to spoil anything, but by this point it is basically that same plot. I'm sure they'll throw in a few more little baby curveballs, but it's just the same story from the first game. So if you know that one, you're going to know this one, and you'll just be like, yep, I gotta go here, gotta go here, gotta do this, gotta go here. So it won't be anything new in that kind of regard. Either way, I hope you found this a little bit helpful. I hope you enjoyed it. If you are interested in supporting this channel, you can like this video. You can subscribe to us if you've liked other videos, if you see other videos around here, or check us out. Consider that before leaving. And then we do have merchandise. You can go to our Spreadshirt, and then you can also donate to us over on patreon.com/criticalreviews to get more reviews like this, because we exist because of our amazing patrons, the Legionnaires. They're the people making this thing happen. So if you want to see more of it and have any suggestions or recommendations for other games, then definitely we'll do it. So either way, thank you for dropping by. I hope you enjoyed it, and just remember to adapt and overcome.